This is my new Fuji X100S that I bought secondhand, and this is the first camera I've bought on what might be my list of my bucket list cameras. So this Fuji right here is the Fujifilm X100S. This is the second in the series of their X100 series cameras. This came out in about 2012 or 2013. When it first came out, it was worth about £1,200 or so. But I bought this one used from mpb.com in the UK for £374, which to me is an awesome deal for a camera that I've sort of like been a fan of for 8 years or so. If you saw one of my recent videos where I was talking about different cameras you can get at the moment for under £600, I mentioned that I was a bit of a fan of like the Fujifilm X-T30 and like the X-H1. And I've always been a fan of Fujifilm, but I've never actually purchased one. I was always shooting Canon, and now I shoot Sony. That's all for my professional work. And I've always wanted a Fuji just for shooting around, sort of taking with me on trips, because it's lightweight, small, and no one really suspects it's a digital camera. And that's kind of a big benefit to me, because right now we're shooting on the Sony A7C, and we've got a big lens on it, a microphone on top, and it's just a little bit sus. Like, you can't just go and shoot everywhere with it. But with this, most people, even people who know cameras quite well, will suspect that it's just film, and you can sort of get away with using it on the fly in more touristy places, sometimes where like security might stop you from shooting. One of the main draws to cameras from Fujifilm is the fact they have a very vintage aesthetic actually baked into their images. So if you just take a JPEG off of this camera, it comes out with a much more contrasty, filmic, warm look compared to more like cold digital raw files that you get out of Sony and Canon. Those images are obviously still very, very good and high resolution and lots of color data, but things you get out of Fuji are sort of like good to go straight away, and it puts a little bit less pressure on having to post-process every single shot that you take. In the camera, you're getting a 16 megapixel sensor, which is fantastic. Has full HD video, which I'm not gonna lie, I'm not that interested in using because it's just a locked focal length. The focal length of the lens is 23mm, which works out as a 35mm full frame equivalent, and it stops all the way down to f2, and then we have an actual physical shutter speed dial on top of the camera, which starts all the way down from bulb to 1/8 of a second, all the way up to 1/4000th of a second. This week we're in London, hence why I'm not like shooting in my room right now, and while I've been down here just using the Fujifilm, I've been shooting in both JPEG and RAW, just so you can do a little bit of post-processing on like your iPhone using Lightroom CC, but with the JPEG files I've been shooting in the Astia soft film simulation profile, which is nice and contrasty, sort of like soft color, but still like that vintage warm aesthetic, which is really, really nice. Just going back to the whole appeal of having a sort of discrete camera kit, I think that's one of the main benefits of this camera in my opinion. It's not something that I feel is much more professional, like something from Sony. Like my next Sony camera is likely going to be the A7S III, which is a much more professional bit of kit, and you don't really want to take it everywhere with you. And it always comes down to that whole thing of like, do you want to be taking out your pro kit with you on shoots, or do you want something that sort of just gives you a really pure sense of photography and it's less arduous, it's less like deciding what lens you're going to use, what filter you're going to use, and if you're going to put a microphone on it, it's much more grab and go, and it's a little bit less stressful. And also picking up a camera like that second hand also takes off any sort of like financial commitment or burden to like spending £1,000 plus on a runaround camera when you can get it for like a few £100, which is still a lot of money, but in the context of expensive cameras, it's really not that much money. Just to get an extra vintage aesthetic on the image of this camera, I've actually put on a Tide Optics 49mm soft diffusion filter, which is really hardly diffused and it's covered in dust and hairs at the moment, but this just gives a little bit more softening to any sort of light sources, similar to things like Tiffin Black Pro Mist or like the K&F Concept black diffusion filters. With the out of camera image paired up with that softening filter, it gives it a much more like old vintagey retro film camera vibe. And with all the images that I've touched so far, I'm really trying not to edit them much at all in Lightroom. The main reason for using the raw images is just so you get the highest res possible, for then exporting, so then just throw on Instagram so they can get compressed anyway. I'm now just going to show you some of the images we've captured in London this week. I look forward to doing a follow-up on this camera, deciding whether or not I'm actually going to keep it, and what I might look at next.